Welcome one and all to the PooderooPlays Kingdom Hearts series. Here we're going to take a deep dive into the lore of the franchise in a multi-part collection spanning every installment. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the truly fascinating universe of Kingdom Hearts.
Alright, so this one is difficult because it's so large. It's a movie and 2 games. It's the X series, the Kai series. Union X back cover, and Union X Dark Road. The story is incredible. You can still download the app and watch the story unfold. I'm going to start with back cover, just because I feel like it offers the most context before you start playing the story of Union. It's set before and during the events of Union Kai. And it tells a story of the Master of Masters, creating the Book of Prophecies that will tell the future. And how he does this is he has put his eye into a Keyblade, the one that Xehanort wields, the no-name Keyblade. Basically what he is going to do is give it to one of his apprentices, Luxu, so he can then, in the future, pass it down through generations, and the eye can watch what happens throughout the world. This gives the Master, with the time travel constraints of having to have a part of yourself or a version of yourself there in order to time travel, this does give him the gift of foresight. Because if Luxu succeeds in handing down the Keyblade, then it going through the generations into the future, the Master can watch that back in the past. And that's exactly what he does, and he creates the Book of Prophecies. He gives a Book of Prophecies to each of his 6 apprentices, but he gives Luxu his own. Also gives Luxu the Keyblade and a strange black box, and tells him to go and bury it in this one specific place. He also tasks Luxu with spying on the other leaders, but never directly intervening. He's allowed his other 5 apprentices to have their own Keyblades, and bade them become protectors of Daybreak Town, which is the town they all live in this world that is connected to every other world. He's given them this Book of Prophecies that warns of an impending Keyblade War. The Master also gives them each a secret task like he did with Luxu. This sows the very doubt the Master will use later for his own means. You will find out in the big reveal in Union, the game. The Book of Prophecies describes the Keyblade War, and it will ensue soon among these people who live in Daybreak Town, and that there is nothing they can do to stop it. Ira, who is the Master's right-hand apprentice, and his task is to lead the other apprentices, his secret task. He tells the Master that maybe they can, with enough Keyblade wielders of their own, in little unions, prevent this Keyblade War. The Master turns around and is like, yeah, you know what, that could work, even though he knows it won't. Even though he knows that saying that is the very thing that will lead to the Keyblade War, allowing them to create unions. So he's saying you definitely can't stop it. This geezer comes forward like, hey, maybe we can stop it with this idea, and then the Master is like, yeah, that's okay, and it is the very idea that starts the Keyblade War. The leaders, still believing that they can prevent the war, fight to gather as much of that Lux light as possible, while also believing that the other unions are gathering the light for their own selfish interests, because there's so much distrust here, especially with these secret tasks. Gula, who has been charged with uncovering the secrets of the Book of Prophecies, which is bullshit because the Master of Masters wrote the fucking thing, so he knows. And he tells Ava to find the best and brightest Keyblade wielders for that entire world and ensure that they make it through the Keyblade War that is about to come. Essentially creating the lifeboat project that we see in the Union X game. The dark times begin shortly after when Ira, the leader, discovers a Chirithy, which are like, they're meant to be the spirits that we see in Dream Drop Distance, but this is like the proto version, so they all look the same. He discovers that one of them has turned dark, and the Book of Prophecies foretells that if one of them turns dark, it will then spread to the other Chirithys and turn them into nightmares. But it also implies that the wielder of that Chirithy, because everybody has one, has become dark, and Ira believes that there is a traitor among them. Alliances have also been forbidden by the Master, but Acid and Gula form one to ensure that they are safe during the coming storm. But Gula's like, let's just leave it between us, let's not include our unions, let's just make sure it's just me and you who are allied at the moment. And Ava, who's the one with a little fox mask, she had heard this happen, them having this discussion, and is like, that's not good. So yeah, Fox-Face Lady gets asked by Bear-Face Man if she would like to join their allegiance as well. Suspicions rise as Envy tells Ira of Acid and Gula's forbidden allegiance. Ira believes that Acid is the traitor because he hears this, and he's like, well, allegiance is the master told us no. So he's like all up in arms about that. And he tells Envy, like, look, he must be the bad guy. And Envy's like, look, let's not rush to jump to conclusions here. Why don't I go and talk to him and try and get them to dissolve this peacefully? Then, you know, if they do that, we'll know neither of them are the traitor. And then he turns around and says, you can go do that, but Acid thinks that you are suspicious because of your proximity to me. He doesn't trust you. Just thought I'd let you know that. So sometimes later, Gula and Acid are meeting in secret anyway. Gula willingly just dissolves his allegiance because he's like, it's pointless, yeah? This thing that you were worried about hasn't happened. This impending doom. It's against what the Master wishes anyway, and frankly, it's just a bit boring. He mentions that even Snake Lady thinks it's stupid and pointless, which enrages Acid because he thought Snake Lady was a snake anyway. He doesn't trust her. So Gula goes to leave, but Acid tries to convince him to align still. He replies saying that the only person he can really trust is himself, and Acid then turns on Envy and starts fighting her with his Keyblade because he thinks that she's the reason why his plan didn't work, and that she was the one who told Gula to break off the allegiance, even though Gula just told him that he didn't. Acid's a very angry, he's very punch first, ask questions later type. And he has her, like, on the floor with his Keyblade leaning over, and she tells him that she's only doing what the Master had bade her to do. But Acid's like, well then f*** what the Master wants to do. Why are we even following that dickhead anyway? He's gone. And he thinks that they should all stop doing what the Master bade. Might actually have been the wisest choice. They continue fighting, so Gula, as Ava, Fox Lady, is running past. Gula's like, yo, Gula, come back, quick, they're fighting, I need your help. Acid has gone nuts. So Gula pulls Ava in as she passes by and pleads that she gets involved. Envy, Snake Lady, then tells her that Acid is the traitor. And Ava doesn't believe it. Fox Lady, she's like, no, it can't be. Guys, I don't even really think there is a traitor. She's like, no, there's no way that's possible. She turns reluctantly, she turns her Keyblade on him, and they all have a massive fight that, like, breaks parts of Daybreak Town and stuff like that. Soon after, we are shown Gula had been given a book of prophecies with a secret page in it that confirms that there is a traitor. So their belief, the whole time, all of them, their belief was right. There was a traitor, and they all thought it was one another. And the lost page that Gula alone has confirms this, although Luciu, if he has the Master's copy, would also have the lost page. The Master had bade him to never reveal it to any of the others. Gula goes to find Acid and show him the lost page, revealing that the Master had told him to find the traitor and that was his task. Gula turns his Keyblade on Acid. Hurt and enraged, Acid fights him back and floors him despite the fact that he has his own wounds and has just been fighting these other people. Ava arrives on the scene and protects Gula by throwing herself over him. Acid, hurt by this seeming betrayal, leaves them behind and then goes and finds Ira. They have like a brief conflict because Acid wanted to be leader and Ira was the leader, but Acid had been tasked to be Ira's right-hand man no matter what, the same way Ira had been the Master of Masters' right-hand man no matter what, and is now following the Master's rules no matter what. They reconcile their differences, and Acid reveals the knowledge of this lost page. Ira leaves to go and find Gula and confirm this, but he finds Ava tending to his wounds, and she hides Gula's body. He's unconscious at the moment. She hides his body in like this, next to a barrel with a sheet over it, and he's like, I want you to give up Gula. And she's like, dude, I'm not giving up Gula. You're gonna have to get the if you think I'm gonna do that. So he leaves, outraged. Later, Ava and Envy, Fox and Snake Ladies, have a fight where they're like, well, I can't trust you. And she's like, well, I can't trust you. She's like, you're doing all this weird stuff. Why are you making an elite force of secret Keyblade wielders? And Ava's like, that's what the Master told me to do. And Envy's like, shit. And she's like, well, why are you being so sneaky and watching everyone and spying on them and then running off to Ira and telling them what they did? She's like, well, that's what the Master told me to do. And so they become friends again after this fight. And then she reveals that Ira had come and asked for Gula. Envy's like, well, what did he want? And she was like, I don't know what he wanted, but he demanded to see Gula and he looked scary, like he was about to f*** someone up. Envy asks where Gula is now. But Ava's like, I tended his wounds and then he f***ed off. I haven't seen him since. And then a flashback to Ava tending Gula's wounds shows us that she had told Gula Ira was looking for him and that he'd been real mad. And Gula reveals to her about the lost page. And it says in the lost page, the traitor bears a strange sigil, but he didn't know what that meant. And he, like, is berating himself a bit for all his actions being based off of this really ambiguous page that doesn't really say that much. It just reveals that there's a traitor, and he gets mad as at the Master. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna summon Kingdom Hearts, and I'm gonna lure the Master back to Daybreak Town. Because if that motherfucker thinks I'm gonna deal with this anymore, he can get bent. Ava tries to tell him, dude, we can't summon Kingdom Hearts. That's like the most forbidden thing. And he's like, well, try and stop me. And so he goes off to try and summon Kingdom Hearts. Ava's like, crap, that's going to start the Keyblade War. So she pegs it to a special force of elite darlings called the Dandelions. And she's like, look guys, when the fighting starts, you can't fight. You guys are the hope of humanity. You guys are going to have to hide. And they're like, shit, boy, what do we do? She's like, we're all going to die. But you guys aren't. You're going to be the leaders of the new world. Then the scene cuts to Luciu standing in what will become the Keyblade Graveyard, with the no-name Keyblade and the black box. On top of the black box, it's got Kai Super engraved on the lock, and he's all like, may my heart be my guiding key, but all serious because he knows he's about to do something real up, and that's where back cover ends. So it's kind of, there are events of this that happen throughout Union. So it's not really a before or after Union Kai. It starts before Union Kai, but it continues right up until I think it's the night before the Keyblade War. Because it starts with the Foretellers. They eventually just go at one another. They're like, I can't trust any of you. So they all have a massive fight. Then the Unions all have a massive fight. And then the Keyblade War just erupts. That's Kai back cover. Just back cover. This
is a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
Is the story of Kingdom Hearts Union X, or Union Cross. I'm just going to forge through with this, because it had like a million names. It was like Unchained at one point. It was like Kingdom Hearts Jago Unchained. It was originally developed for the PC 2016, and it was called Kingdom Hearts Unchained back then. It was a PC browser game exclusive, but then they made it available to mobiles as Kingdom Hearts X Unchained, as an app. It was later remade and added to as an app called Kingdom Hearts Union X. And the movie tie-in that it had was back cover. The movie was released with Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. Which is my favourite name ever. And then it was later remastered for the Story So Far and All-in-One Bundle collections. All online features have been offline since 2021. But this game is canon! And it hasn't been discontinued, technically. And I'll explain why by the time we get to Dark Road, which is the last chapter of Union X. But players can still download the app, with all the cutscenes and reports and stuff in it. All the lore is there, but you can't play the missions anymore. It's set as a story being told to a young Kairi by her grandma. So you know in Kingdom Hearts 1, when we got that one-shot scene of an old lady reading to Kairi? That's her grandma. And now we know from Birth by Sleep that Kairi grew up in Radiant Garden and is actually like the princess of that world. This is the story she was told by her Mima. Kai, or X, is a more personal perspective of a Kingdom Hearts story, allowing players to place their own custom characters into the main role I've written here. When in actuality, how I would just say it is, you got to customize your character, and that's freaking dope. And it begins by choosing one of four out of the 5 unions to join, and it introduces a universe that's set 100 years before Birth by Sleep. The player, who is you, who you've customized and then enter into this world, arrives in Daybreak Town. At the start, you are seen fighting a swarm of Heartless when you are overrun and rescued by the leader of whatever union you chose. And they were known as Foretellers, the leaders of these unions, the original Keyblade Masters. You get rescued by whichever one is the head of your union, and you meet a Chirithy, which is a particularly benevolent Dream Eater. And you are tasked, after you've been given your Chirithy, of gathering fragments of pure light called Lux. L-U-X, Lux. After you spend some time exploring and defeating Heartless for a while, you meet your Foreteller, who tells you you will need the strength of the other members in your union if you're to help fight the darkness. But they warn you that not everybody in the other unions are gathering light for good reasons. Some are gathering light to be selfish and hoard it because this Lux is very powerful magically. Like the foretellers were told by the Master of Masters in back cover that one of them doesn't have the same goals the rest of them do, the Union leaders impart that same knowledge that has been messing with them to their trainees. They do the thing of parents parenting the way they were parented. They don't break the cycle. They're teaching the kids the same mistakes they were taught. The Chirithy sends the player to various worlds where they must find the source of the Heartless in that world. Unable to determine this, the player returns to Daybreak Town and is promptly told the story of the Master of Masters and the Book of Prophecies. So then Chirithy sends the player to another world where the Dark Balls they've been finding may have originated from. So the player returns from this mission to meet Ephema. Yes, Ephema. Ephema in later on is kind of a big player. He's a big cheese, kind of. He's a gatherer from another union, and he wants to explore the Forbidden Foreteller's chambers in Daybreak Town, and he convinces you, the player, to go with them. However, he goes on ahead, and the player is met with a test of strength by Foreteller Ava. When Ava easily defeats you, she learns of the player's sadness in their heart, and associates that with darkness, because apparently she's paranoid as shit. And she banishes them from the chamber, but like, no, you're sad, go away. But then the player's like, alright, you then, I'm gonna go to another world. So, while exploring another world, the player meets Skuld, another member of Ephema's union, and they go to explore another Foreteller's lair on this world. There, they discover new Heartless and two Foretellers battling one another in this Foreteller lair. Upon the battle's conclusion, a dark Chirithy, a nightmare, informs them that the Heartless they'd been defeating were actually other Union members that had fallen to darkness. So here we are learning that it is possible for when you fall to darkness to become a Heartless. To try and understand what they'd seen, the player, Chirithy, and Skuld re-enter the Foreteller's lair. They're caught by one of the Foretellers, and are told that Ephema is a traitor and has disappeared. So assuming the Foretellers have captured Ephema, the player duels the Foreteller, but gets his ass kicked. Or their ass kicked, because the player is you. So you battle. Why did you do that? Battle the Foreteller and then get your ass kicked. The Foreteller reveals themselves as Ava from before, and offers them a place in her union. She's like, you know what? I like the cut of your jib. She has a separate objective, and she's given her objective to her union, which is to basically create a lifeboat that will survive the Keyblade War. So she's poaching and sniping other members from other unions to save as many of these Keyblade kids as possible, stick them in a lifeboat, and save them from the Keyblade War, right?
I'm gonna jump on that spaceship and get out of here. Wanna come?
Skuld accepts, but the player remains unsure whether they should leave or stay to try and avert the impending future war. As tensions and accusations rise between the unions, the leaders begin to sow discourse between one another, and the player is chosen to seek out Foreteller Gula, as Gula may know of a way to stop the war. So when Gula is found, he reveals that the only one who can prevent the war is the Master of Masters, who was the one who predicted the war would happen in the first place and told them not to bother trying to stop the war. So Ava tries to track down Luciu, who'd been tasked to watch the events unfold for the Master, as we know because he's got the Keyblade. He is the only person with the knowledge from the alleged lost page of these books of prophecies. Luciu reveals to her that there is a fabled traitor that had been heralded to bring about the actual Keyblade War. He tells her it's him, or he tells her it's her. I don't remember which. But basically, she gets real mad and attacks him, and she rings the clock tower bell that signals the start of the war. I've even put in my script here, judging by her reaction, it would seem that Luciu had told her that she was the traitor, as her actions inevitably lead to the war starting as the bell rings. Soon after the war begins, you must battle each of the Foretellers, and you are able to survive until the last, but you are weakened due to exhaustion and your wounds. There are Keyblades everywhere, and damage caused by the war, creating the Keyblade graveyard. There we go. And player passes out as Chirithy, Skuld, and Ephema approach them. The player wakes up in a simulation
of
Enchanted Dominion, which is Maleficent and Aurora's place, where they are told by Chirithy that everything they experienced was a dream ever since they said no to Ava's offer. A time-travelling Maleficent, so Maleficent's learnt to time travel, appears somewhere nearby and talks about how Sora and his friends cannot interfere with her here. So this is a modern-day Maleficent. She sets about taking control of this dominion. This is the point where things start getting really weird, but for some reason I enjoy it. Ava's union is the one known as the Dandelions, which is the one that she's trying to get you to join. And Ava has tasked this union to gather Lux, just like the other ones. But her plan is to create a select group of elite Keyblade wielders, the most powerful and magical ones of them all. And they're going to go on the lifeboat and they're going to survive the Keyblade War. As she knows, she won't be around forever. So she's selected 5 candidates to become the next Dandelion leaders and given them each a rulebook. Does this in any way sound familiar? One of these candidates is a girl named Strelitzia. So Strelly here is introduced to the player and gives them the same deal that Ava had given them before.
Wanna come?
However, they are eliminated immediately by a mysterious figure who steals her rulebook and takes her place. Then the events the player had dreamed of in the Keyblade War take place here. And afterwards, Skuld and Ephemer save them. This is after you woke up in Enchanted Dominion Land where Maleficent walks in, but before the events you had dreamed, but those events happen anyway. They bring the player to the Realm of Light, but everyone loses their memories, apart from the 5 new Union leaders, which is kind of handy, you know, if this generation of people are starting a new world. You don't exactly want them to not know what they're doing, but if they're the only people who know what the world was like before, kind of sucks to be them. Ava sends Skuld, Ephemer, Brain, who is another Dandelion, and kind of an important deal, and Ventus, yeah, that Ventus, and a Dandelion named Laurium to the Keyblade Graveyard. So Laurium is Strelitzia, who we know just got murdered. It's her brother, and he is the human form of Marluxia. Yes, that Marluxia. Here they must meet with their fellow Union leaders to determine the fate of the Unions. After Brain discovers a copy of the Book of Prophecies, they decide to band all the Unions together under one huge union, Union X. Shortly after that, however, the players experience the same events that led to the Keyblade War once again, and is beginning to have nightmares about it. Chirithy reports this to Ephemer and Skuld, who tell the Chirithy to protect the player from the truth at all costs. They set off to explore a new growing darkness. Time-traveling Maleficent, with her DeLorean, soon discovers that she can't take control of the Enchanted Dominion, and a mysterious character called Darkness, the manifestation of darkness itself, reveals to her that she is trapped in a simulation. To prevent her from messing with the past. He tells her to go to the lifeboat in the Tower of Daybreak Town and go back to her time, as her knowledge of the future would damage things too much. So he's basically like, away with you. You're gonna f up my plan to infect you in the future. Essentially. He's like, you're gonna mess everything up for me, go away. Laurium and his friend Elrina, who is the human version of Larxene. Yes, that Larxene. They investigate the tower due to Strelitzia's murder, and they are confronted by Maleficent, who's going to try and get this time-traveling device. She defeats them. She whoops their ass and she jumps in the lifeboat and goes. But glitches begin to appear and impact Daybreak Town, and Brain finds out that it's because the datascape, the lifeboat thing that they went into, wasn't a lifeboat to the future or a different past. They're in a digital Daybreak Town. And the glitches start appearing and breaking it down, and Brain finds out that it's because the datascape is being connected to a data world that was never connected to the original Daybreak Town. While investigating this, Brain finds out that Ventus was not one of the intended new leaders of the Union. He suspects that Ventus murdered Strelitzia. Brain's theory is correct. Ventus murdered Marluxia's sister. Though it turns out Darkness had manipulated Ventus into doing it by posing as Ava. Laurium returns to them and mistakenly thinks it's they who covered her death, though Ventus steps forward and claims responsibility for it. At this moment, Darkness reveals itself from inside Ventus. Then the Union leaders talk to Darkness and discover it had no real motive for killing Strelitzia. It knew that Ventus wanted power. Ephemer then basically says that Ventus wouldn't have done that. Darkness itself must have done that. Darkness is like, well, it doesn't matter, because it happened anyway. The end result is all I care about. So Laurium realizes that means Strelitzia didn't need to die and attacks Darkness, a pure Darkness, by himself, but is instantly defeated. Brain then interrogates Darkness further, and it reveals that it possessed Ventus because the Book of Prophecies said he possesses Ventus, and that he and the Master were actually old friends, the Master of Masters. Brain, Ephemer, and Scold then battle the Darkness. Meanwhile, the player discovers that the glitches in town are drawn to the beacon in the tower, and the Darklings are drawn to the Keyblade wielders. So the Darkness is drawn to the light, basically. Scold and Brain are defeated by the Darkness, and Ephemer is left to fight alone. Upon revealing that he can't do it by himself, the Darkness suggests that they call it a tie. It's like if Magneto lifted up Charles Xavier in his metal chair and turned him upside down over the edge of a building and was like, and Charles is like, I can't get in, you wearing your condom hat, I can't get in there and stop you from doing this to me. And then while he's got him dangling upside down about to kill him, Magneto just went, should we call it there then? But Brain is like, dude, I've got questions to ask you. You're some ancient being of pure evil. But why did you choose Ventus? Is Brain's question. And after a massive philosophical discussion about if destiny controls one's actions or if one chooses to follow destiny, Darkness changes its reason once more and states that it possessed Ventus because it is in fact several entities that need to be one entity, and in order to do that, it needs intention, or one sole will. So basically, Darkness isn't actually one thing, but in order to become one thing and gather all its power together in one place to use that as one massive force, it needs a vessel. It's basically saying that it needs a vessel with one goal. Like how Xehanort's one goal was to summon Kingdom Hearts to reset the universe. After it explains that very cryptic and frankly nonsensical way of talking about how it uses its power, Lorian regains consciousness and comes to terms with how his sister died, and then turns to fight the Darkness again. As the player also comes into fight, Darkness turns around to them and is like, Daybreak Town will fall, and it will fall to Darkness, to me, and I will claim it. And he's just like, alright, laters. The group ascertain that the lifeboats at the top of Daybreak Town are the reason why the world is becoming corrupted. The lifeboats are set up so that it will start sealing off Data World that they live in now, if the Darkness can't be defeated, in order to seal the Darkness in and stop it from spreading. Because of Maleficent hopping in the lifeboat and fudging off, the rest of the lifeboats were like, oh, panic! That must mean that this Daybreak Town is infected. So that's why they've started glitching this Daybreak Town everybody lives in now. The group conclude there's no way Ava would have let this happen intentionally, as it would mean the destruction of everybody left from the Keyblade War, and they prepare to fight Darkness itself. Darkness maintains that he cannot be defeated unless he has a form. Because he has no form, he can't be defeated, which makes sense for later on in the franchise. Darkness has to have a vessel, and then once that vessel has been destroyed, it destroys the Darkness inside also. Ventus turns to the Darkness and claims he will force Darkness to take form. The game cuts to the real-world Darkness trying to read the data in the lifeboat room of real Daybreak Town. So one of the Darknesses has already escaped the data world. Luciu walks in all of a sudden and places a white-wrapped figure into one of the pods, claiming he is laying a seed of hope in the future. This thing that he's dropping off is the real dandelion, and that the Master of Masters had told him to do this. The game then cuts to a flashback of the Master and Darkness having that conversation the Darkness had said the Master and him had had. It's a flashback to him and Darkness standing on a cliff where the Master tells Darkness that the Book of Prophecies only contains some of the future, not every single detail, and only the stuff that the Master has deemed super important, or in this case, I think, the stuff he would allow the Darkness to know. He continues to state that the lifeboats that send people forward in time force them to give up their body, which we know to be the rule of time travel in this universe anyway, and that they'll only be able to reclaim it if there is a medium and somebody who knows who they are and remembers them. This means that he can use the gazing eye inside the no-name Keyblade as a medium, and Luciu as his memories to travel forward in time. That's actually how he made the Book of Prophecies. While he saw a world he himself couldn't even conceive, and the 7 lifeboats would send 7 lights into the future, though he didn't know who they were. Cut back to
What's your profanity?
Laurium, Marluxia. While coming to terms with the grief of his sister, he hears her voice while tending to the wounded Ventus. And Elrena's Chirithy tells him they'd seen a girl looking like his sister, dressed in white, walking with a man in a black coat, Luxu, and the seed he'd placed in the future. The group ascertain it could be a backup of Strelitzia made out of her data, and Laurium says they'll find out more in the real world. Meanwhile, in the lifeboat room in the real world, the seed is sent into the future, leaving 5 unused pods, because Maleficent took one of them. Luxu and the Darkness discuss the Darkness's plan to travel to the future and lay claim to worlds unseen, and how it used to have form when the Master was younger, but it tried to defeat the light in a whole form. Its will could not be contained in that form, meaning it still needed one solid physical form, which requires infecting people's hearts. That makes no sense. Basically, the Darkness is trying to regale the tale of why it now is the way it is, and why it needs to spread rather than just stay in one person, I think. 6 Darknesses with their own individual wills currently exist. The one currently talking had entered the real world with Maleficent, and 5 still exist in the data world. Luxu comments that this Darkness is the only one in his way, and prepares for battle. The group of leaders, Elrena and the player, then enter the room to discover it empty, apart from the 5 unused pods and 1 broken one. They struggle to decide who goes, but eventually decide Laurium, Brain, Ventus, and Elrena should take one, leaving Ephraim in the past. Brain had given him his Keyblade and Book of Prophecies, claiming they were meant for him. A flashback of Luxu with the Master reveals that the Darkness used to be 13 entities, but sacrificed some in order to defeat light, which allowed it to attack people's hearts instead of their bodies, so attack them directly in the inner jelly, the jelly that matters. This meant Darkness could now spread farther, but it couldn't contain one sole purpose. Fragments of Darkness became heartless, and the rest became entities with their own individual wills. These were formless, but they could take over vessels with strong hearts, and defeating these vessels would defeat the Darkness inside. He then finishes by saying that the Master wanted himself, Luxu, and the 5 foretellers to hold the strongest of the 7 Darknesses, but he trained them to be resilient so that they could hold the Darkness inside and not succumb to it. The passage in the book about a traitor was placed there to sow the seeds of doubt deliberately so that Darkness would latch onto the 5 foretellers, thus making them stronger through exposure therapy, I guess, and that he had trained them to be resistant to Darkness in the first place. So basically he wants to trap the Darkness in the strongest lights he knows in order to stop those Darknesses from being able to spread. The remaining 6 of the 13, with 7 of them taken care of, he would have the 5 Union leaders be corrupted with, and the last be trapped inside the data world. The 5 Union leaders had to be the strongest of the strong, the Dandelion leaders that Ava had selected. That's why he had given her the secret objective. It wasn't just something she thought of, that was her secret objective. He then reveals to Luxu who the actual traitor is revealed in the book. Present day, in the real world, Brain sends Marluxia, Larxene, and Ventus into the future, and debates how to save both Ephraim and Skuld. He decides to send 2 pods to the data world. Luxu appears, reminding him of the way time travel works, so Brain can't do that. Brain opts to stay behind so that the others can travel forward in time. In the data world, the player and the remaining friends encounter 4 Darknesses that wish to cross over from the data world. Ephraim refuses, so the player attacks him and claims they had already succumbed, and they want to help the Darknesses leave. The player and the Darknesses attack and defeat Ephraim and Skuld, and as the player is about to slay her, is shot in the chest by a beam from Ephema.
I'm a firing my laser!
Allowing Skuld to escape in one of the 2 pods Brain had sent. The beam creates a portal that sucks the player and the 4 Darknesses inside. Ephema gets into the other lifeboat, and the 2 travel to the real world just to witness Daybreak Town being consumed by darkness. The two huddle inside their pods as the entire building around them collapses down on them. Somewhere connected to the data world, the player and the Darknesses sit, and the Darknesses cheer for the player for goading Ephema into making a portal, and say that the Darkness should escape the player's body before it perishes and kills it. The player laughs before they reveal that they were never possessed by the Darkness to begin with, and they seal the portal from inside, trapping the Darknesses. The player then embraces their charity before being engulfed in light and reappearing in a completely white place where other wielders hug their charities, who hold their hearts and become dream eaters. Player's Charity explains that the wielder and their pet are connected through their heart, so if the wielder dies, so do they. But if the wielder chooses to sleep, the charity becomes a dream eater and guards them while they sleep. The scene fades to a woman handing baby Xehanort to a man in a blue robe. The figure takes Xehanort to Destiny Islands and watches as he grows up, then passes some amount of years later. Xehanort then wakes up in Scala ad Caelum, the town built over the ruins of Daybreak Town by Ephraim, who somehow survived. This Xehanort finds a young man with black hair named Ericus, and the two play a game of chess together. The scene cuts back to the player refusing to go to sleep and passing into the great beyond with their charity. Then there's a cutscene where the Master explains himself to a Darkness about his methods, wanting to find a world one cannot conceive where neither darkness nor light reign. In the ruined Daybreak Town, Ephraim emerges from his pod, so he just survived and then decided to build Scala ad Caelum on the ruins of Daybreak Town. Flash forward to Kingdom Hearts 2.5, where the Raven brings Maleficent's robe to the fairies, and when they remember her, she becomes real again, successfully completing her time travel loop. However, back in the past, Laurium wakes up in a field of butterflies and flowers, and Elrina wakes up in the mountains with thunder rumbling in the background. Ventus lies unconscious in the Keyblade graveyard as an unseen person approaches. The person that's walking up to him, it must be Xehanort. This is a very important reason for why Brain is such an important character. Brain wakes up in Scala ad Caelum, where Sigurd, a man in a faceless robe, hands him his hat and tells him to come to his HQ. The man explains that it was set in stone, that Brain would appear here at this time,
in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen,
and be greeted by Sigurd. He takes Brain to the town square where he sees a statue and recognizes the person straight away. Brain is told it's a depiction of a Keyblade wielder who built the town, Ephema. So basically, when Ephraim went into the future, he had the Book of Prophecies and Brain's Keyblade. When Brain shows up, it's because he has a medium and Ephema had been remembering him that whole time. Luciu drags the black box to the Keyblade graveyard in the past of Union, because bearing in mind the Master had already told him to do this before the events that took place in Union X, and pulls back his hood. But the face, when he pulls back his hood, is Brain's face. Even though we know from something else later on, Luciu is revealed to be somebody else. There's a Reddit theory here that I've included in the script. Given the law of losing one's original body when time traveling, he created a new body technically when he arrived at the new place. The going theory is that for the time traveling purposes, he leaves his body and becomes a new body at the new place. What happens to the old body? Does it disintegrate or is it left in the past? Luciu possessed Brain's dead body and has been possessing Brain's dead body in order to survive for as long as he has. He's done it more than once, and each time he does this, he then takes on the age of that person he's possessed. That's why Luciu is able to live as long as he actually eventually does. And they still haven't really revealed how he's done it, which is why I want a Luciu game so bad. But anyway, that is Union X without Dark Road.
Thank you everybody so much for joining me as we explore the intriguing stories of the Kingdom Hearts franchise together. I have been your friendly neighborhood Pooderoo, and I hope you've had as much of a blast with this series as I did with making it. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye bye!